The Acolyte trailers have revealed this massive secret about what really happened on Brendok 16 years ago that we did not see in episode 3. And this explains how the witches died and is pointing directly to the Jedi being evil in this series.
Evil!
So although we just got an entire 45-minute episode of flashbacks on Brendok to explain May and Osha's backstory and explain the witches and how they view/wield the Force, we know for a fact that we will be going back to Brendok 16 years ago at some point in the upcoming episodes of this series, because we missed a huge part of the story as we only got Osha's perspective, and Osha wasn't there to see how the witches died and to see the Jedi arrive. But a lot of these questions have already been answered in the trailers that were revealed before episode 3, but we either didn't have enough information until we saw episode 3, or these scenes in the trailers were so quick that most people didn't even notice them. Either way, it's clear that Lucasfilm was trying to keep this a secret, because what truly went down on Brendok was way crazier than just May starting a fire. And now, with the scenes from the trailers and the information we got from episode 3, we have enough to finally reveal what went down on Brendok, and I must say, it's not looking good for our Jedi heroes. As we see in the trailers, these 3 specific scenes that are extremely important to reveal what actually happened on Brendok. And not only that, it will explain what's happening in the current day of this Acolyte series, as May and Kymir are on their way to Kofar to kill Kelnacca. So let's break these 3 scenes down. First, let's start with the speeder bike scene. This is a very brief couple frames in a trailer, but it is very important, as we see what looks to be all 4 Jedi on speeder bikes going through the forest on Brendok. Now, it's most likely that this is before the events of all the witches dying, as the Jedi have probably seen that their fortress is on fire and are coming to help. As the Jedi do, they help people. At least that was their intention. We know that May was the one who started the fire. We see this in episode 3. Her and Osha get into a fight and May ends up burning her notebook and it begins to burn down the entire witch's fortress. But we also know that this is not how the witches die. We see their bodies at the end of the episode laying on the ground and there's no fire around them. So somebody killed the witches, and I don't think it was a 8-year-old May. But would the Jedi, the keepers of the peace, actually murder all of these innocent witches?
Possibly.
Well, in episode 3, we also see Mother Coral, the Zabrak-looking witch. She wants to fight the Jedi. As soon as they arrive, she wants to fight them. As soon as they leave, she wants to fight them. She just always wants to fight them. So it's definitely possible that the witches are the ones who start this whole fight. But it still doesn't really make sense, because how would 4 Jedi defeat all of these witches? They're extremely outnumbered. So how do we go from this scene of them speeding off to go help the witches to all the witches ending up being dead? Well, this was revealed in episode 3 and explains why Kelnacca is fighting against everybody else. Because in episode 3, we see Mother Anisea take over Torbin's body like it's nothing. His eyes go fully black, he falls to his knees, and he can't breathe. It's clear that these witches are extremely powerful and could kill all 4 of these Jedi pretty easily because they outnumber them. But it was said in episode 3 that the witches don't want to kill these Jedi, because if they did, the entire Republic would be after them. But that does bring us to the second scene from the trailer. This is a very brief frame that we only see for a second. It's clear that they're trying to keep this all a secret, teasing it out until we actually see it with our own 2 eyes in episode 4 or 5. But seeing Kelnacca's eyes all blacked out like this does reveal that the witches have taken over his mind. And that's why, in this same scene, we see Kelnacca fighting against Master Sol and Padawan Torbin. But we've seen this before in Star Wars, all the way back in Star Wars Rebels, when Ezra, Kanan, and Sabine go to Dathomir. Kanan and Sabine become possessed by witch magic. A little different here because their eyes are glowing green instead of going all black. But contrary to a lot of fans' hatred for this show, these witches' abilities have been around for a long time. This second scene also explains why Kelnacca goes into hiding in current day of this Acolyte series. When we saw him at the end of episode 2, he's not wearing his Jedi robes, and he's living in a crashed ship that looks like Shrek's swamp. And the reason for this is because of what happened on Brendok. He lost control of his body and started to attack his own fellow Jedi. He didn't know how to control it and didn't want it to happen again, so he secludes himself for the next 16 years on Kofar. And that is very similar to what happened with Torbin. In episode 2, it's explained that Torbin has been in this meditative state for 10 years, and he hasn't said a word to anybody. But as soon as May finds him, he wakes up, apologizes to her, tells her that they thought they were doing the right thing, and drinks a poison voluntarily that kills himself. What is Torbin referring to when he says they thought they were doing the right thing? Is he talking about murdering all of the witches? Either way, a lot still needs to be explained about what happened on Brendok 16 years ago. Because although these trailers are revealing this massive secret about this huge battle that took place between the witches and the Jedi, it doesn't fully explain how the Jedi come out on top and why Kelnacca goes into hiding and Torbin goes into this really long meditative state. And that brings us to our third and final scene. This, again, they tried to hide in the trailer as it's only one frame. And it's Torbin with his head being held down by what looks to be Kelnacca's hand, unless Indara or Sol has a very hairy hand, and his face is covered in scratches. The same scratches which eventually become scars that we saw in episode 2 on his face when he's meditating. And again, unless it's a very hairy Indara or Sol, this is Kelnacca being controlled by the witches, almost killing Torbin. Now, although those three scenes do explain a lot, that the Jedi have come back to the witches' fortress and are fighting each other, it doesn't directly explain how the witches all die. However, it's pretty easy to come up with some theories. First of all, Indara is nowhere to be seen in any of this. There's 4 Jedi on Brendok: Kelnacca, Sol, Torbin, and Indara. And Indara is not in any of these scenes, and it's likely that she could be off screen slicing and dicing some witches while Torbin and Sol deal with Kelnacca. And if that is the case, does this make the Jedi evil? Evil! There's a reason that May is hunting down these Jedi and murdering them. She certainly believes that the Jedi are evil, and I'm sure the witches do too, but are they truly the evil beings in this scenario? It looks, at least from the speeder bike scene, that they're trying to come help the witches, because their fortress is on fire. But is that truly the case? This Acolyte show does one thing extremely well, and that is perspective. In episode 3, we got Osha's perspective of what happened on Brendok, and we didn't get any answers to the questions we came for. Like, how did the witches die? How? But from May's perspective in the show, the Jedi are evil.
From my point of view, the Jedi are evil!
And from the Jedi's perspective, obviously the Jedi are not. But who is right in this instance? And when do you finally think we'll get to see these flashbacks again to Brendok to see how the witches died and why Kelnacca is fighting against Torbin and Sol? In episode 4, in episode 5, in episode 6, 7, or 8? Tell me what you think in the comment section below. And did you notice in episode 3 that the witches might have explained how Anakin was created? Well, I explain all of that in this video right here.